that unless you are married and unless you have kids, everything else that you do is not looked at as being successful, even if you have a great job, even if you are like educated. Hi guys, I'm Kudzi and this is my sister Kim, and we are the Empowered Sisters. And today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, and that is, should all women get married and have kids? So, Kim, what do you think about this topic?
So I personally have a lot of feelings around this. I mean, it's something as a young Black African woman that I've been
Mm,
aware of from as long as I can remember. And you feel the pressure like coming from an early age. And it's really tough because you need to sort of figure out who you are in that process and figure out where you stand versus where society is trying to put you. So for me,
mm,
it's a very charged topic. There's a lot of emotions there, a lot of strong feelings, but I think it's
mm-hmm.
something we do need to discuss.
Absolutely. And I think like for me, being married and having kids, I feel like I I felt the pressure of having those things, and I felt like my accomplishments as like an individual would not be validated until I get married and have kids. And this was just something that was always subconscious because of what society says. And I think that that is just such an unfair pressure to put on women, to say that unless you are married and unless you have kids, everything else that you do is not looked at as being successful, even if you have a great job, even if you are like educated, even if you're making a positive contribution to society. People always seem to like respect the marital status of a woman, like, if she's
Mm.
married versus if she's single. And I feel like single women, like there's just this whole stigma, just the word single women, like single woman is all about like, and like it's got this connotation of being unstable, or you know what I mean, like you're on your way there but you're not there yet. And I
Yeah.
think that is just, yeah, it feels very unfair as a woman when I know that that expectation is on us as women. I feel like it's yeah, it's something that's not fair.
Definitely. And I mean, I can actually remember a few instances in my childhood where people
Mm,
would sort of like sit down and gather and like discuss one specific woman who like hadn't
mm-hmm,
gotten married, and she was like of a certain
mm,
age at that point, like maybe late 20s or in her 30s now. And they would sort
wow,
of
yeah,
discuss like who can we set her up with, like what can we do to
wow,
like make this right. And it didn't sit
yep,
well with me back then. And it definitely doesn't sit well with me now because it's like,
yep,
why is that the one thing we are so focused on in terms of someone's life? Like, why aren't we worried about their professional development, their personal development? Are they actually a decent human being before you
mm,
worry about, like, are they married? Do they have children?
absolutely,
And I think it forces a lot of women into jumping things they're not entirely ready for. I'm
mm-hmm,
not married and I don't have kids, so I don't really
mm-hmm,
know if there's such a thing as like knowing you're completely ready. I'm not sure yet, but I
mm.
do know that we don't want to force people into doing things purely to please other people, especially if they don't know that it's the right thing for them at that point in their lives.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think um just to add on to that, to say that, a woman like wanting to set up someone like because they're of a certain age, it puts pressure on someone. And think people like women jump into some relationships and they hurry to commit before they're
Mm,
ready because they just want to get people off their back and say, okay,
mm,
now I'm married. Now you can't be on my case. And I think people like women have entered into some abusive relationships because they haven't gotten time to really get to know and understand the partner that they're getting to marry. And for me, being a feminist, like I am a high key feminist, like I feel
mm.
like what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if the same standard is being put on women, it should be put on men. And I don't think that is the case. A man can be a
Definitely.
single, exactly, a man can be a single man in his 40s and people will still be like, he's successful, and they
Yeah.
accept his success as an
Mm,
individual, right? And I
mm,
know there's this whole thing about the biological clock, like, oh, but
mm,
women need get married and have kids because, like, their biological clock is running out or whatever. But I think we can't say that right now with where technology has advanced to, with things like
mm,
IVF treatments, where we're seeing women getting pregnant in their 40s and even 50s. So
mm.
biological clock, like they can freeze their eggs and all
Yeah.
those kind of
Have a
things. So,
surrogate. There's so many options.
mhm,
And I think for me, the
yeah,
main thing, like especially as someone who hasn't taken that step yet, has been at some point I realized that all these things are really amazing things that we should definitely celebrate when they happen. I love to see
yes,
people in love, and I love
mhm,
to see people having healthy children, having happy
mhm,
children. But I think ultimately it was realizing for myself specifically, am I in the right place to have the right
mm,
mindset to actually enter a commitment like this? Because you don't have a
yes,
kid and then like 2 months later decide, actually, I wasn't ready and like send it away, you know? Once you're there, you sort of
exactly,
have to be present and now you're in
yes,
it. So I think I'm
mhm,
just really focused around getting myself straight and understanding
mm,
who I am and having such a great self awareness so that when I go into
mhm,
these situations and I face these unique challenges, they don't
mhm,
take me aback. You know, I'm not surprised, I'm not shocked. I can handle it because I know who I am, I know what
yes,
situations I thrive in, etc. So I think more
yeah,
people, I would hope, would sort of put more focus on themselves too. A lot of women don't get the chance to just really focus on themselves for a bit. It's
yeah,
always
yeah.
about your husband or your
Oh my
kid
goodness.
or your other family members, and no one really gives you a chance to explore who you are as an individual, which I think is really important.
I couldn't agree more, because this is the path for most women. They go from their father's house to their husband's house, like
Mm,
straight, like, and they have no time to live by themselves and understand their own rhythm and,
mm,
how they do things, how they like things. It's like
mm,
being in one long-term relationship into another. So I think it's important to encourage women to really take that time to say, you know what, there is no pressure on age anymore. If you feel the biological pressure, there are options, like use them, like, and just prioritize knowing yourself. Because if you don't know yourself and now you have to get to know somebody else, that's just so
mm,
much pressure. And
mm,
the pressure just increases. Like, I can tell you, as someone who's married with kids, that the goalpost for women keeps on moving. Like, first it was like, get married, you get married, and then it's like, oh, now you have to have kids. What's taking you so long? And then you're like,
mm,
fine, now I've got a child. It's like, well, that child can't be by themselves, because my son was the only child for 5 years, for 5.5 years. And I
mm,
felt like there was so many people used to ask me, oh, he's so lonely, now you need to have another one. Like, and they
mm,
didn't understand our unique situation to say, we have our own reasons why we're not having another child as yet. You know what I mean?
mm.
And people like just say, this is the expectation. Yes, the goalpost was here, get married, you've reached that. Now and then have a child, you've
Mm,
reached that. Now the other goalpost is now have another one, so the other one is not
mm,
lonely. And I'm like, so when is this gonna end? When is it gonna be enough for me just to say
true.
this is my life? So I feel like sometimes people like don't understand how these societal expectations impact an
Mm,
individual, and feel always pressured and feel like, what I've done is not enough. It's not like I can do more, and people are not being satisfied in themselves and in their accomplishments and where they are in life, just
mm,
because of what other people think. So what I would really want people to know, especially women, young women, is that, what's important is how you feel and how comfortable you are in your situation, more than
mm.
what other people think. Yeah.
And I think what you say there about like other people asking you, like, when are you having another kid? I think
Yeah.
people, honestly, a lot of people, especially like the older women in our society. Like, I don't think they're doing it out of malicious intent. I don't think they're trying to be
Hmm.
mean or anything. But I
Yeah.
think sometimes the effect it has on people is they hear these questions and you sort of reflect back on it and you're like, so I'm not good enough. Like, what I've done so
Hmm.
far is not good enough because I still haven't
Exactly.
done X, Y, Z. So for me,
Exactly.
it's like if you're really close to that person and you have that relationship where you can discuss things like challenges around why someone hasn't had children or why they haven't had
Mm.
more children, it's like you can have that conversation. But I'd say possibly avoid it if you don't have that kind
Mm.
of relationship, because it's very invasive,
Exactly.
especially for private people. If there's something really deep and
Absolutely.
personal going on, like some women can't have children, and that's a big
Exactly.
issue for them. And now you're putting them on the spot, like at a family event, to be like, why haven't you had
Mm.
children? And it's like, that's not something they want to put on blast. So, like, don't do that to them. Don't
Don't
force
go
them
there.
into that
Exactly.
position. Yeah. Let them explore themselves, figure out what they need to do. And if you have that kind of relationship where you can really sit down and talk to someone one on one, then that's great. You can confide in each other, come up with solutions if they need a bit of help understanding how to go around certain things. But like, don't put people on the spot, especially in public situations. It's awkward for some people. In some cases, it's even
Exactly.
humiliating, depending on who has done it. So it's like,
Mm.
be mindful of these things and don't be the person who asks inappropriate questions at inappropriate times just because you think everyone does it, everyone asks these questions, so I can too. So just think a little bit more around, how can I better approach this in a way that is more sensitive to what this person is going through currently in their life?
Exactly. And I feel like in society as well, and especially, I'm just going to talk about like in the Black community, sometimes we don't have in enough like role models who are single and making it in for us to celebrate them and see that it's okay and this is a path that someone can take. I think like we should have more people like Oprah Winfrey. She's not married and she doesn't have kids, and she's
Yeah,
like one of the most influential and successful women in the world. And
yeah,
her success has not been diminished by her marital status or the fact that she doesn't have kids. Like she
yeah.
is still making such a big impact in the world. And I think if women feel like they can actually take that path, it is something that is available to them as well. Even they might not be an Oprah Winfrey, but in their own capacity, they can choose to take that path and be successful without that. Because I know that there are some people who do not want to get married and they don't want to have kids, but they can't even begin to have that conversation because they're like the odd one out. And people see that as there's something wrong with you. Like, why don't you want this? This is what's good for everybody.
Yeah,
So it's not the case. People choose. We need to allow people to have the choice to say, this is what's good for me. And it might not be good for you, but that's okay. But this is what's good for me. And this is the path that I want to take. And to just be and let be. Like, let people
yeah.
choose. Let them have a say in their own lives. Yeah.
And if anything, if ever you don't understand why someone has made a specific choice, I love the
Mm.
idea of choosing curiosity rather than judgment. So if you tell me
Mm.
something like, okay, I don't want to have kids, and maybe I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
have kids my whole life, right? Okay, then I
Mm-hmm.
think I don't understand this, but maybe I should ask questions and like get to know more about this perspective and how this person arrived. Because I feel like that's how you learn from each other. If I was to choose
Mm-hmm.
to just judge that person and shut them down right away and be like, that doesn't make sense, then I've lost the
Yeah.
opportunity to learn something, because there's probably a very good reason why they arrived at that. But it'll be lost on me if I don't have that curiosity to really ask more questions to find out. And again, this comes back to the kind of relationship you have. If you have that
Yeah.
relationship where you can really ask questions, in a non-judgmental, educational way type of
Yeah.
scenario, then I say go for it, because that's how you learn from other people. I've learned so much from people who have completely different aspirations from me, and it's been so
Mm-hmm.
helpful in terms of how I see the world and how I see other people, because I'm now able
Mm-hmm.
to take that step back and be like, who are you? Not what are my expectations of you, but who are you
Yeah,
actually? And it actually helps you
that's
to have much
interesting.
richer relationships with people if you take that approach, I feel.
Exactly. And I just want to bring another aspect, which is like mental health. Sometimes we
Mm,
forget that there are people who are not able to cope with the pressures of being a
mm,
parent, and that it is a lot of pressure and that it is a lot of responsibility. And there are
mm,
people who struggle with like anxiety or just like feeling overwhelmed. So they might be
mm,
overwhelmed with their own life as it is while they're by themselves. And then society then puts this added pressure on. Now you have like get married and have kids, and they're like
mm.
they enter those commitments, but they're not, it's not right for them because they know they
Yeah.
cannot handle the responsibility. And then we see um, children sometimes being abused in these
Mm,
families where people have had children and mentally they cannot cope
mm,
with that responsibility, but they feel that's just what is supposed to happen at a
mm.
certain age. So I think,
Something, yeah.
mm,
I was
yeah,
gonna
and I was just
say,
want to say,
yeah. Sorry.
sorry, I just was going to say that I think people should also evaluate their own mental state and see where they're at and see if they're ready and things that they have to do before they get to that state to make them mentally healthy to be able to take on those added responsibilities.
Hmm. I think what you said there is so important because a lot of women actually have their first presentation of a mental illness right after having birth. It's very common
Mm,
for depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, all sorts of mental conditions to actually
wow.
first come up when a woman has just had a baby for the first time. And I think it's a combination of things. It's a very high stress period in anyone's life.
Mm,
And on top of that, you're having a huge fluctuation in your hormones. And remember, that affects your brain as well. Like your brain is not
mm,
immune to the fluctuating state of our bodies. So whatever's affecting our bodies affects our brains too. And I think if you went into that situation before you were really ready, you may not even know that this is something I need to get help for. And now that affects your child as well because you're not able to
mm,
care for them. And then there's that guilt of why am I not a good mother instead of how can I help myself so I can be a better mother, that sort of thing. So I think it's really important for people to understand that it's not risk free. Having a baby is not just something you do for the sake of it. There's a lot that comes with it and a lot of things that could happen in that
absolutely.
process. Be emotionally prepared for all of these things so that if you need to, you're able to vocalize that you need help and you get the
Mm,
help that you need so you can actually better help your children as well.
exactly. And I just want us to just finish off with another aspect, another interesting aspect I'm going to throw in the mix, and that's
Mm,
the issue of healing, personal healing. Because
mm,
besides mental health, sometimes when you haven't healed from your own personal traumas, childhood traumas, traumas in life, they
mm,
can be like, exacerbated, or just it just goes from a flame to a blazing fire when you have a child because those
mm,
traumas are reignited. So
mm,
it's important for people to do some personal healing. If there is
mm,
anything in your childhood that you are not happy with, it's a good idea. And I think it's just a good suggestion to deal with that before you have children, because when you have children, all those things, even if you had swept them under the carpet, the fact that you now have to be a parent yourself, those issues will come back and they'll be confronting, and you have to deal with them while you're trying to deal with being a good parent. So I think healing, personal healing, is one thing that should be a prerequisite. You know what I mean, for
definitely,
having
yeah.
kids. Yeah, and just to be a healthy, healed parent so that you can be in the best position to heal your child. So don't rush into anything, and until you've given yourself time to just evaluate your own journey, your own traumas and your life, and to just heal from that.
Mm. And also on that, I think if you haven't healed, sometimes what you may do is you may deny your child's experience because of that. Like you don't want to look it in the
Absolutely.
eye, so you're denying
Yes.
everyone else's experience with it. Even if someone else tries to tell you there's a problem, you sort of are denying it at all costs because you're just not
Hmm.
comfortable with accepting the fact that you have certain issues and you have certain traumas that are affecting the way you see the world now. And I think that can be very traumatic for the child as well because it may make them feel
Yeah.
rejected because they
Hmm.
are trying to reach out, they're trying to be there, and you keep pushing them away because of this own unresolved trauma that you're still carrying
Hmm.
around. So even just for that parent-child relationship, get yourself
Hmm.
right so that you can get them right too when they need it. You're able to actually show up for them because you don't have that fear of I'm not good enough or I can't possibly discuss something like this. You're not closed off.
Exactly. And just want to say, as we close, Kim, do you have like some final words like this you want to share just on this topic, like something that you want everyone to know just on this topic of should every woman have get married and have kids? What would be your final thoughts?
I would just say, firstly, honor yourself. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
you're the only person whose thoughts you go to bed with at night. So do what's
Mhm.
right for you at the end of the day, even if other people don't understand it. That's okay. Not everyone will get it. That's just kind of how life is. And secondly, if you realize you're not coping on your own, even if you already have children or you're already married, you can still get therapy, you can still get counseling, and you can learn to heal even within that environment. It doesn't mean that you've missed your time, but now you just need to be aware of it and get that help that you need.
I love that. And I actually don't think I have anything more to add to that because I think to say, think about it beforehand. And even if you're in it, it's not too late for you. Like you can
Yeah,
still get help. You can still go on that journey and understand why you do things a certain way, even if you're married and have kids. And that will help you on your journey going forward. So,
yeah,
yeah, I think every woman should just honor themselves, do what's best for you. Don't be
definitely.
pressured into anything. And if you are doing something because you're being pressured, just think about that and just say, oh, am I doing this because this is what I want to do? Or am I doing this because this is what is expected of me? So, that just think about that in actually every decision in your life as a woman. Just think about the reason why you do certain things. And I think that'll just go a long way in helping you making the best decisions for you. So
Agreed.
yeah, yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, if you have any thoughts to share on this topic, please write them in the comments below, and we will see you in our next video. Bye.
Bye.